If there's one thing that Star Wars loves to do, it's repeat itself. Whether it be a character always having a bad feeling, or recycling numerous other quotes, or reusing cinematic elements, Star Wars loves repetition.
It's like poetry, so if they rhyme.
So let's take a look at one instance of this repetition centered around my favorite Star Wars character, Darth Maul. How many times do we get to see Darth Maul's lightsaber cut in half throughout Star Wars media? Well, let's count them. First and most obvious is in his big screen debut, Episode 1, The Phantom Menace from 1999. Obi-Wan manages to land an upward swinging strike, slicing the double-bladed lightsaber in half and launching the lower half into the wall, destroying it and rendering it unusable, leaving our favorite Zabrak with only one half of his weapon. Obi-Wan then kicks Maul and knocks him down. In the novelization of the film by Terry Brooks, it's mentioned that Obi-Wan used a downward swing and followed it with a failed swing at Maul's head. However, I will not be including every book adaptation because there are too many for me to track down at this time, and not all of them even mention the saber staff being destroyed. So I will include the full original novelization, but the point of this was to see how many times it happens, as in with visual media. Comic books are still on the table though. Speaking of, that's our next stop. We have the Phantom Menace comic adaptation by Dark Horse Comics from 1999, released May 5th through 26th. Like in the novelization, Obi-Wan destroys the saber staff with a downward swing, but this time Maul kicks Obi-Wan instead, knocking him down the pit in the feed generator. We have another comic from 1999, Star Wars Episode 1 Adventures, which showed us the story of the film from the perspectives of the different main characters, as well as some additional events that weren't in the final cut of the movie. These stories have been reissued in other collections, including the Rise of the Sith Omnibus. The Obi-Wan-centric issue was released in June of 1999, and it recaps the climactic duel. This version shows us similar events to the movie, an upward swing that cuts the saber, followed by a swift kick. However, we see that Maul's staff was cut into two still active lightsabers, which Maul drops, and we don't see the bottom half destroyed. He just uses the upper half for the rest of the duel. I think it's funny to see the still lit blade laying on the floor. Kinda makes me think of that one sketch from Robot Chicken, where Qui-Gon accidentally drops his lightsaber through the floor and it just keeps going. There was a third comic adaptation of The Phantom Menace in the form of the Star Wars Prequel Trilogy graphic novel from 2017. This single volume has a comic book style retelling of all three prequel movies in one book. Again, a nice upward swing from Obi-Wan to cut the staff, and this is immediately followed by a forced push from Maul to knock Kenobi down the hole. Believe it or not, we also got a manga adaptation for Episode 1, like a genuine black and white Japanese graphic novel also released in 1999. Funnily enough, this one is actually available on the Marvel Unlimited comic app. In this version, it's hard to tell if Obi-Wan used an upswing or a downward strike, but the result is still the same. We also see that the force from the attack knocked Maul down, and he dropped the damaged half of his weapon. I think a downward slice makes the most sense, given the visuals, with the angle of how the two halves of the staff are oriented, and Maul losing his balance and falling down afterward. This manga is one that I'll be returning to for a closer look in a later video. As far as I'm aware, that's all of the comic and graphic novel versions of the duel from the film that depict Darth Maul's lightsaber being destroyed. There was a cinemanga released by Tokyopop that was basically just a graphic novel using screenshots from the movie, so I assume the same thing happened there as well. While it's not a comic per se, I know that a book containing an illustrated screenplay also exists, but I don't currently have access to it, so I can't verify whether or not it shows the same scene. Some drafts of the script that I've come across don't explicitly mention Maul's lightsaber being destroyed. In the recent Phantom Menace 25th Anniversary comic, though it does show a brief glimpse of the duel, we do not see the full event, nor Maul's lightsaber being cut in half. Up next is a comic that I covered on the channel previously, Old Wounds. This comic is from Star Wars Visionaries and depicts cyborg Darth Maul attacking the Lars family homestead, trying to draw Obi-Wan out of hiding. In this comic, Maul uses a new curved-handled double-bladed lightsaber. Towards the end of his duel with Kenobi, Obi-Wan slashes Maul's saber in half with a backhanded swing and takes his left arm off with it. We have another comic from Star Wars Tales, the long-awaited duel between Darth Vader and Darth Maul. In issue 9, Maul has been resurrected by some dark side cultists who believe that Vader is an unworthy apprentice to Darth Sidious, and they intend to have Maul defeat him to take his place. During the course of the battle, Vader chops the weapon in half with a powerful downstroke. Maul then takes the opportunity to dual-wield the broken halves of his weapon, one of the few times we actually see Darth Maul dual-wielding. In a reverse of the current pattern, in the events of the Star Wars Tales story Nameless, Maul begins with a single-bladed lightsaber, then upgrades it to his iconic saber staff to defeat the Jedi he was hunting. As far as I'm aware, that's it for comics. Now let's move on to video games. Surprisingly, out of all the games that feature Darth Maul as a playable character or fightable boss, only 2 of them show his lightsaber being cut in half like it was in the movie. The first is Star Wars Obi-Wan for Xbox. The final boss battle against Darth Maul is a 2-phase fight. Phase 1, he has his full saber staff. Phase 2, he has only one blade. While there's not a big cinematic showing the saber getting cut in half, it's pretty well implied here. In The Force Unleashed, specifically the HD versions for PS3, Xbox 360, and PC, while Darth Maul himself is not in the game as a character, the holodroid Proxy takes on his appearance and fighting style for the boss battle on Raxus Prime. During the ending QuickTime event, the player cuts the saber staff in half with an upward swing, grabs both halves of the saber by the handles, uses them to throw Proxy against a pillar, and then stabs him through the shoulders with the two lightsabers, pinning him to the column and leaving him there until the mission is complete. This boss fight is not in the other versions of The Force Unleashed, nor is it in the comic book adaptation. The novelization mentions Proxy taking on Maul's appearance, but not the destruction of his saber staff during his fight with Starkiller. The fact that we only have 2 instances of this happening in every video game to feature Darth Maul as a boss battle honestly surprised me. But it doesn't happen in The Phantom Menace for PS1, any version of the Jedi Power Battles, or the LEGO Star Wars games, nor during his fight in Disney Infinity. Maul does appear in both versions of Battlefront 2, but not really as an event boss character, so we don't get a reenactment of the movie here. Additionally, there are a handful of times where Maul is playable, but only with a single blade instead of his saber staff. The Force Unleashed and the PS1 version of Jedi Power Battles are a few such instances. He also only has one blade in Fortnite, apparently, although he has both in Tony Hawk Pro Skater 3. So with video games out of the way, we now come to animated media. Though Darth Maul rebuilt his saber staff for the final season of Clone Wars, we don't see it get cut in half. Rather, while Ahsoka is battling Maul on some scaffoldings high above the ground of Mandalore, Ahsoka manages to grab the middle of the lightsaber handle and pulls Maul down, making him lose his footing and dropping the lightsaber. It likely did break upon collision with the ground, though. In the Ahsoka novel, where this battle was originally adapted from, it does not mention if Maul's lightsaber was a single or double blade, but either way, it was not destroyed in the book. And finally, the Duel of Twin Suns from Star Wars Rebels, the modern canon version of the rematch between Maul and Obi-Wan. During this short and decisive bout, Kenobi strikes down the center with an overhand swing, severing Maul's lightsaber, a modified Inquisitor weapon, in 2, as well as dealing a fatal blow to the Zabrak. Notice that both blades are still active. If Maul hadn't been killed by that slice, he could have dual-wielded. That's it for Darth Maul's lightsabers being cut in half, but I'd also like to bring up 2 other cases of this happening. During his final duel with the Grand Inquisitor, Kanan Jarrus exploits the design flaw in the Inquisitor lightsabers and slashes the weapon apart. The spinning saber breaks, with both blades still active, similar to the destruction of Maul's final saber. And in the Old Republic cinematic Hope, when Satele battles Darth Malgus on Alderaan, her saber staff is cloven in 2 by the powerful Sith Lord. And with that, we've covered every time I'm aware of where we watch Darth Maul get his weapon cut in half. Just for a quick recap, I counted 11 confirmed times in total. Once in the Phantom Menace movie, once in the novelization by Terry Brooks, 3 times in American comic adaptations, twice in 2 non-Phantom Menace adaptation comics, once in the manga adaptation, once in the Obi-Wan Xbox game, once in the HD versions of The Force Unleashed, and finally in the Rebels episode Twin Suns. We can possibly count more if we include the cinemanga and illustrated screenplay. Most of these instances were adaptations of the Phantom Menace, but the rest just decided to copy that element from the fight. No matter how you slice it, with one blade or 2, Darth Maul is a fierce warrior and still my favorite character in all of Star Wars. But what do you think, though? Did I miss any notable moments where his saber got destroyed outside of other book adaptations of the movie? What is your favorite game where Darth Maul has made an appearance? And what's your opinion on double-bladed lightsabers in general? Leave your thoughts in the comments below.